Hello, and welcome to another episode of Highlights from the Hill. I'm your host, Carol Kavanaugh, superintendent, and I'm here today with high school principal Evan Bishop, and we're going to talk a little bit about the recent lifting of the mask mandate at Hopkinton High School.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. I think I'd like to start with that sort of definition about lifting of the mask mandate.
Sure.
Because I think it's important for people to realize that we haven't unmasked all of our students, but what we've done is given vaccinated children and families the choice not to wear a mask.
Yes, that's true. And there's been a lot of work that's gone into it. Obviously, thank you to you and to the school committee as we've gone through this process. There's been a lot of anticipation leading up to our first day, which was on November 1st. And I think the way we set it up was the right way to go about doing it in regards to putting out some information to families to saying if you can fill out these forms and produce this certain documentation, then you have the ability to unmask. But if you are unvaccinated or you're not comfortable taking your mask off, you don't have to. And I would say after the first day, roughly just based on what I was seeing in the hallways and in classrooms, I would say about 50% of students kept their mask on and about 50% took it off.
Sure. I mean, and you're really boots on the ground, so you get to see what's happening inside the high school. The nurses, as you know, worked on Sunday to get through all of that documentation. And I think that on maybe Monday morning, we had about 650 kids who had submitted appropriate vaccine documentation as well as a permission slip from their parents. So that's just a little over half, I think. I think about
it's just about over half.
kids.
And we had about a handful of students come in on that first day, either missing the email or having some questions, and we said you had to fill out the appropriate paperwork. So the list is kind of being updated in real time and shared with staff. But there wasn't that many students on that first day that weren't aware of what they needed to do. Either they made the decision to fill out the paperwork or they decided not to.
So we should probably talk a little bit about that list that the staff gets, because I'm sure people are wondering, is that a HIPAA violation or is it not?
Yeah, and from my understanding, it's not. The list that we're sharing with staff is of the students and families who did not fill out the authorization form or submit vaccination status. So like I said, that can include people who are unvaccinated. It can include individuals who are uncomfortable taking off their masks. And so, we're not talking about necessarily the vaccination status. It's just who filled out the appropriate paperwork and who did not.
Yes.
And the list shared with the staff is those who did not.
Yes. And so the teachers are sort of your first line of defense.
Yes. So
ensuring.
we have some administrators at the front doors making sure that students are either wearing their mask or not, based on if they're on the list or not. But typically it's going to be the teachers who in that first period class or just throughout the course of the day know their students well, know who's on the list, and can have conversations with those students if maybe they don't have their mask on, they should, or vice versa.
Yes, and you've really only done this for a single day.
A day, yeah. And I think there was a lot of, like I said before, anticipation, a lot of concern, a lot of questions, and I think the first day went as well as we could have hoped. I think it felt, it was pretty quiet. It felt pretty normal. I walked into a number of classrooms to kind of see, and I saw a lot more masks on in classrooms than off. I'd say sometimes more in the hallways, maybe some students were taking their masks off. I saw some students who had the ability to unmask have their mask underneath their chin to be able to pull it up if they felt that they should, or if they were around students or staff that were wearing a mask and they wanted to be respectful. So I thought that was nice. It was interesting just to kind of see it all happen. I think it went as well as I could have hoped it could have gone.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, in leading up to all of this, I thought maybe this would become, I don't know, unruly or something. I'm not sure exactly, but it wasn't.
It wasn't. Yeah, that's always the fear. I mean, but our kids are wonderful. They, no matter what change we ever make, they always step up and do the right thing. And so, yes, there was a little bit of anxiety going into the day, but I was impressed, as I always am, with our students in the way that they conducted themselves, and this way staff as well. Because I know staff, there's a lot of opinions, but they did their job. They were professionals. They came in. They were, I saw, like I said, a number of classrooms. They were doing an excellent job. And so regardless of people's feelings, I think once they got in the building, they did what they were supposed to do.
Sure. Yeah, I sometimes liken this to, Hopkinton High School is almost a microcosm for the rest of the world. I think I guess just part of being a good human being or a good citizen is that when you walk into a place where you see a lot of people masked, you sort of read the room and put your mask on, or you go to the grocery store, you have an opportunity to mask or unmask, and I think our kids are kind of learning that But the nice part of having that in school is that they have their teachers to guide them through this process.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think that the teachers did a really nice job of that. And I think that's what I was mentioning before, some of the students who didn't have to have a mask on, but kept one underneath their chin, kind of around the ears, just because they, depending on who they're talking to and what their what their level of comfort is, they were willing to pull it up and have those conversations. And I think it just shows the respect that the students have for one another and they have for the staff and the staff has for each other.
Yes, I think, it's kind of interesting too, because I think each teacher kind of conveys those ideas around respect, but kind of in their own way,
Yeah, there's no question. I think certain teachers are probably a little bit more deliberate about that but the best part is the relationships. You can see it the moment you walk into a classroom, the relationship our staff have with our students. And staff does it in different ways, but they know their students, they know what their level of comfort is, and I think the students know it as well. So it's just nice to see the environment that's been created there.
Yeah, and it was even interesting, some of the big news media came out too. And of course they want to ask our kids things. And it was interesting to hear that some kids would say, I came into school and I wasn't really sure about taking my mask off just because it feels so unnatural to do that.
Yep.
But with a 98% vaccination rate in your building, it feels like it was an okay choice to be made for a 3-week trial period.
Yeah, and I think that the trial period is a smart idea. And with that high level of vaccination rate, it's I think it's our time to give this a shot. And I've mentioned this to you a few times. There's a lot of area schools that have been contacting us, contacting you, contacting me, just about how things are going, how the process went, because a lot of places are also looking at their vaccination numbers, seeing it pretty high as well, and wanting to kind of go through this process and seeing how we do. So, I think the district is a leader in a lot of ways, and this is just another example of that.
Yeah. Well, we could say it all starts here, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
No, and I do think it was, sort of a big leap of faith, but we are truly blessed to have the staff and the kids that we do, and so it was kind of okay, I think, to make that choice. And I think we would be remiss if we didn't, have a little shout out to Sean McAuliffe, who I think since the onset of the pandemic has been working very hard to mitigate risk, to keep people in Hopkinton very safe. And I know that Friday of this week, on November 5th, he's doing a booster clinic for all of our faculty and staff. So anyone who hasn't yet gotten a booster, and you're obviously able to do that as an educator, you can go to the Marathon Elementary School and get a booster. Yeah. And as you also know, the CDC has approved the vaccine for 5 to 11s.
I know, I saw that, yeah. I was talking to my wife today about thinking about it for our children. We have 9-year-old girls, so
yeah. It's a tricky choice.
It is a tricky choice, but yeah.
And I think we'll be doing a clinic for kids as well next week.
That's great.
So
that's great. Yeah, Sean's been wonderful. He's been, obviously, not necessarily this school year, but last school year, I feel like I was talking to him almost on a daily basis, and very supportive of the schools. And you've mentioned it earlier, just a shout out to the nurses as well. They've been just tremendous through the last 2 years through this process, and especially over this past weekend with compiling the information that we needed for our list. So
yes, yeah, I mean, we really should spend a minute with the nurses because they never say no. I mean, the turnaround time, I mean, it was kind of crazy. So we had sent out information to parents, I believe, on Tuesday of last week. And they had until Saturday to submit all their documentation. So between Saturday at 3 p.m. and Monday morning at 8 o'clock, all of that information had to be processed. And I think impressive. Our nurses,
it's a lot of work.
It was a lot of work, and it was very good of them to take the time to do it.
They're tremendous, yeah. Sarah Patterson and Julie Thompson at the high school, but the district-wide, the nurses are just tremendous.
Yes, and really we should say that behind the scenes, it's not just Sarah and Julie working, but on a Sunday afternoon, you can have multiple nurses sort of behind the scenes processing all of that information.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they've very largely been the glue that's held us together through all of this.
That's true, yeah. It's certainly been a team effort.
Yeah, and there are some places, I know, people probably are wondering why are there some places where kids still have to wear masks and other places where they don't. So we know that the school buses are federally mandated.
Yep. And then also with athletics, with the MIAA, they still have some governing body in regards to their expectations for all of the member schools. And so right now, any indoor sports, as we're kind of wrapping up our fall season, volleyball tends to be the one that is still going on. We have a very successful volleyball team right now. starting their tournament play Friday night.
Yep.
And so they'll still be masked up indoors, even though our policy here at the high school is to be mask optional. And then any spectators also have to wear their masks.
That's great.
During the
yeah.
So, and I think that'll be reassessed as we get closer to the winter season and after Thanksgiving. But we'll wait for guidance from the MIA on that.
Sure. Yeah, and I think spectators and even more broadly visitors, we really don't know what the vaccination rates are or the vaccination status of individuals are. So as a school, we'd be
we're still limiting, at least at the high school, the visitors in general. If there is a need to have someone come in the building, say for a team meeting or whatnot, then we'll certainly go through the process and make sure that we vet that individual. But for the most part, we're having meetings from outside people still on Zoom and just limiting the amount of guests in the building during the school day.
Yeah. I think people also wonder what kind of data are we gathering? You know, because they'll hear that we're gathering data. Well, what is that? And I would say early on, I would have anticipated that more than half of the kids would have submitted. I mean, we know that 98% of them are vaccinated. So why is it that only just a smidge over 50% have sent us that information?
Yeah, I think it's probably a level of comfort, right? And obviously making sure they take the appropriate safety measures. I don't know this to be the case, but I do anticipate as this goes on throughout the trial period, and if things go well, fingers crossed, I do think some of the students who are vaccinated might fill out the paperwork. I think they might want to see how it goes in the first few days. But yeah, when we sent out a survey to the students, it was about a 70-30 split, and we almost had every student. We had almost about 900 students fill out the survey about if they'd be interested in going with a mask optional policy. And then when you kind of break down the numbers, it's a little bit more like 55% were the ones who took off their masks. So even that was a little bit different. But my guess is that they just want to see how things go before they make that ultimate decision.
Sure. Yeah, and you had 2 students who are now part of our school committee.
Yep, tremendous. Yeah, Jesse and Ryan. Yep.
Yeah, they were so articulate in explaining.
Yeah, they actually created the survey and sent it out and collected all the data. Yeah, it was great.
They did a really good job.
Yeah, they did a nice job.
Yeah, and I think too that we'll just have to watch, COVID positive rates. Not just I think at the high school, but I think in the community. People will ask if the community gets to a particular threshold, will we stop the mask lifting? And I always say that it's really hard to put a number on something like that because a lot of it is circumstantial. Yeah. Last year I think when we would see numbers creep up in the community, a lot of times that was not a school-aged child, but rather, an elderly person, something that happened in a particular facility in town, and those numbers would creep up that way.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I didn't mention this earlier. I think some of the students who may have filled out the survey that they'd be interested in going mask optional and are vaccinated and could do that might not be because of a family member at home or a younger sibling who's not vaccinated. So I think those are also some decisions that maybe personally they think that they'd like to see us go in that direction, but they're not willing to do that yet just because of family reasons.
Sure. Yeah, it will be interesting. So we know that on Monday, the 22nd of November, masks are coming back on. And I think that makes sense just because we'll be moving into those, late fall and winter holidays where there's an awful lot of travel and people are spending time with family and friends, large gatherings, and so who knows what kinds of things will be happening in terms of COVID exposure, Yeah,
and I think it's a smart idea to do this trial period. I think we're going to have to message it with the students that we will be going back to masks that week leading up to Thanksgiving. I think when things go well, and that's what we're hoping for, and sometimes it can be a tough transition to go back. Yes. So we are talking about how that's going to work. But I think people understand with the Thanksgiving travel and large gatherings that they understand why we're doing it.
Yes.
And like I said earlier, I do expect our students to step up and do the right thing.
Yeah. And if we go to mask lifting again in January, we will have been through it once, but your 5 to 11s will also have had the opportunity for vaccination.
Very true. That's a good point. Yeah.
So it's really great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. These are kind of exciting times.
They are exciting times, and I think that it's exciting. And I said the other day to some staff, you got to find that balance, right? Because there's a level of excitement that exists. There's also a level of anxiety and concern that exists as well to see how it goes, and trying to meet people where they at with how they feel about this whole thing, and you're just hoping that things go well. Yes. I'm anticipating that to be the case, but if not, we'll adjust and do what we have to do. But I do think that this was the time to do it.
Yes.
I think that we have the support of the community. I think our staff has done a tremendous job. I can't thank them enough just for everything that they do.
I know.
and just the professionals that they are. And I think this is a great group. We have a wonderful senior class this year, the class of 2022, and they've set the tone from the beginning of the year, and they're a great example for our school and for our underclassmen. So I do think this was the right time. And so I'm hopeful that this trial period goes well.
Sure, yeah. And I think one of the things that people don't think about at home is, so there'll be that great big cultural shift on the 22nd of November.
Yep.
And our director of facilities has been saying that our PPE burn rate this year is astronomical.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of happens because masking standards are so relaxed in the world that as kids come in to school in the morning, if they haven't been on a school bus, they think, I don't have a mask.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, maybe 2 weeks ago, we left the school nurse with 2,000 of them, and she's already looking for more.
Yeah,
so.
I can see that. Yeah, I usually stand, if I can, at the front door at the beginning of every school day. And, leading up to this trial, when masks were mandated, I'd still say we'd have anywhere from 25 to 50 students that would come in without a mask.
Sure.
And they would almost kind of like, oh, I'm sorry, and they'd run right into the nurse's office. And there'd be never any tension or friction with that. The students would understand, they'd get the mask, they'd come in. And oftentimes it wasn't the same student.
Sure.
Sometimes it was different students, right?
Yeah.
So, we were going through quite a few masks at that time. And leading up to this trial period, knowing that we were collecting information if students filled out the appropriate paperwork, we wanted to provide masks for different classrooms, just in case if a student came in and was supposed to be wearing a mask and didn't have one, that a teacher could give them one.
Yeah.
So every classroom or every workspace that we have, where it's the English department workspace, the math department workspace, all have masks boxes in there. So, but I'm sure we'll go through those pretty quick as well.
I'm sure you will, yeah. Do you know if it's happened yet?
I think we had to give out, obviously, just as many as we did prior, but I'll keep a close eye on that as we.
Yeah.
You might be hearing from me for more money.
That might be another one of those interesting pieces of data.
Yes.
How many kids who should be wearing a mask just because they they haven't submitted appropriate paperwork yet are coming in and not wearing them, and the teachers giving them to
and
their
I don't have the exact number. I think there was some fear that number would be high, but I don't think it was as high as we expected it to be on that first day.
No.
So we'll see how that kind of progresses over the 3-week period.
And I think we say it all the time, but the kids are just so good.
Yeah.
If you say to them, we need you to put a mask on, they will do that.
They'll do it. Yeah, they'll do it. Yeah, they're very respectful. It's a we talk about our core values a lot at the high school, and we commit ourselves to that idea of being accepting of one another, being respectful, being supportive, and I think it starts in the community as well.
Yes.
And so we're very fortunate. I hear from a lot of different principals. I get together with them on a monthly basis, and some of the different things that schools are dealing with in regards to this mask wearing. I feel like we're very fortunate we don't have a lot of that.
Yes.
I mean, every school has their concerns and their issues that they have to work through, but we're fortunate just the level of respect that we have across the board for everyone at the school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think a lot of that, we thank our faculty, we thank the nurses, we thank the kids, but we really should thank the parents as well.
Yeah, that's where it starts. Absolutely. Yeah. It's a commitment to education in this community that's pretty special.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yes. I think that students come to school ready to learn, engaged, different obviously abilities and different skill sets, but generally speaking, people come and they want to do well and they're supported at home, and it's a nice environment.
It sure is, yeah. And I think that's one of the things that has allowed this whole unmasking to take place.
Sure.
Very often when I think things are happening relative to the schools, we hear from parents. And I think in the same way that you say the very first day of unmasking was so quiet, parents have been relatively quiet about this too. I think it's just something that they may have sort of seen coming.
Yeah. Yep. And I agree with you. And I've heard from some families and some parents that were very concerned about what the day would look like. And I think that sometimes you jump to that, the worst case scenario. And I can obviously we're only a day or two into this, so I do want to put that out there. But for any folks who are concerned about what the day would look like, it felt for the most part like a regular school day. And there were a lot more masks on than I think people assumed that there was going to be. And it was something that I think people who are anxious and nervous about what the environment might look like can step back and be like, okay, it seems to be going in the right direction. We have certain things in place to make sure that everyone's following the rules and that we're trying to keep distance as best that we can. Lunch is always been a challenge. I think that's district-wide and in a lot of schools during this. But in general, we have a lot of things in place to make sure it's a safe environment.
Yes.
And so it's not just a situation where people can be super anxious about just because they don't know what it's going to look like. We've been preparing for this. We feel we have the right things in place, and so far so good.
Yes. Yeah, I think if you're a parent and you're sitting at home, in your mind you've conjured up images of what does it look like. Yeah. But if you are at Hopkinton High School and you go into the classrooms, you would think it was business as usual.
Correct. Yep.
Some kids wearing masks, some kids not wearing masks, but the teaching and learning just makes it all feel so seamless.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, and that's what I saw. I saw about 7 classrooms on that Monday, different levels, different grades, different disciplines, and it felt very normal. Yeah, very normal. Yep. Yeah, nothing changed, so it was good.
Yeah. So I don't know. Are there other things that you're thinking about?
Yeah, I guess not to put you on the spot because I know I'm here on your show. I guess the question I think a lot of folks at the high school, students, staff, parents, I'm sure, are wondering what's the next step after the holiday. Sure. When's that discussion going to happen? Where are we going to be going back to unmasking? Are we keeping the masks on until the new year? What's that process looking like? I don't know if you have any information for anyone.
Right. So what will happen is at a school committee meeting after the 22nd of November, we will really sit down and kind of go through all the data. How many kids, maybe what I would call sort of use some anecdata about when you walk into a classroom. If you kind of did a count, how many kids are still wearing masks, not wearing masks? Did it evolve over the 3 weeks? Were there cases in the community? Were there cases in the school? And I think after we look at all of that, we really have an opportunity to assess when or if we want to lift the mask mandate again. And it would be hard to say, would it happen before the winter holiday break, or would it happen just shortly after that? I think when kids are out of school for the December break and you go through all of the December holidays and New Year's, you get to that place where again, you want to be a little bit cautious. Absolutely. I mean, you'll remember last year we were very cautious after those lengthier breaks.
Yep.
Yeah. And when we were thinking about this trial period, I think that the school committee would have wanted to see, an option where we could be kind of cautious, but at the same time kind of take this for a test drive, given the fact that we have a 98% vaccination rate. And so it just felt like if we could get something in before the big holiday started, and really when you think about these 3 weeks, because we had a day off from school yesterday for the kids for professional learning.
Tomorrow, so yeah.
Diwali tomorrow, Veterans Day on the 11th, it really amounts to 12 in-school days.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah. Well, it's good to hear. Yeah, I'm sure that there'll be some questions, and if you need any data from us or have our school committee presenters can certainly present how things are going to the school committee at that time as well. So whatever you need from us, we're happy to provide.
Yeah, and I guess one thing too just kind of popped into my mind is that Sean has always said, if COVID doesn't come into your building, it can't be transmitted. And so today is Wednesday, and on Wednesday we have to report to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education all of our COVID cases. And again, we can say that we haven't had any in this week's time, which is pretty amazing. Really good, you talked a little bit about lunch at the high school, but lunch in every one of our buildings has kids and 5 to 11 unvaccinated kids unmasked. And they are elbow to elbow. And I know there was a lot of consternation prior to the start of the school year. What will lunch look like? And it's kind of going okay.
Well, knock on wood, yeah.
I don't know. So, we'll be making decisions coming up. Awesome. And, I don't know. So I think, you've had a single day. It will be really interesting to watch this unfold.
Yeah, it will. And, if we're excited about it. If anybody in the community has any questions about how we're handling it or any concerns, obviously I would welcome them to give me a call or send me an email. I'm happy to talk to them about it. But, I think one day in, we're off to a good start.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Great. Well, thanks for having me. This has been fun.
Well, I want to thank you for being here today. And I know this is a topic that's on a lot of families' minds. And so it's really great that you could be here to have this conversation and just share information with the community about what does it look like.
Yeah. I was happy to. This is fun.
I don't know. I think if I were a parent, I would feel quite assuaged by everything that I had heard.
I hope.
Yes. Yeah. Of course, we have to remember it's one day.
True.
So.
It's true. That's very true.
And thank you to you for tuning in to Highlights from the Hill. Carol Kavanaugh, your superintendent with Evan Bishop High School principal.
Are you worried about letting your child take the wheel? Maybe you should also be worried about what you're doing behind the wheel. Have you ever sent a quick text, just this once? Well, that might turn into a catastrophic accident. Monkeys see what monkeys do. If you do it, why wouldn't your child? In a child's brain, almost all things their parents do, they can do too. 78% of teen drivers surveys text and drive. 59% said their parents do it too. Stop texting and driving, because if you do it, your child will too.
You're watching HCAM Ed.